Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, an extremely disturbing book, a Gothic romance and a delightful memoir. It's my weekly wrap-up. So quite a lot of variety this week, as you can probably tell from that intro. I've got 6 books that I finished to talk to you about and 3 that I'm reading at the moment. And this week covers the end of June and the beginning of July. And July, you'll remember, is the month where I'm reading books that have been suggested by viewers. So quite a lot of the books I'm going to be talking about today fall into that category. So let's start with the end of June then. So one of the things I was trying to do in June was read some kind of extreme horror type books. One that I read for that, I don't think it's really extreme horror, but it's definitely an extreme book and a very, very disturbing book was The Sluts by Dennis Cooper. This was a really challenging and difficult book, but a really interesting and gripping book as well. So it's published in the early 2000s and it takes the form of like web posts and emails and things like that. So quite an early example of that kind of book that that tapped into the kind of internet culture, if you like. And the majority of the book is reviews on a website where people can review male escorts. And most of those reviews relate to one guy in particular called Brad. And you build up this picture of Brad and his life, and in particular his kind of self-destructiveness through those posts. And all these people kind of speculating about him. He becomes kind of almost like a mythical figure on this website. And it was fascinating. I mean, it's really horrible at times, really really disturbing. But you can't stop reading it. You really want to know what happens, and you need it. The book kind of presents a puzzle almost that your brain needs to put together, and that puzzle is that you don't know if anyone's telling the truth or not. You don't know if any of the people who are posting these things are really who they say they are, if the things they are describing really happened, and it's by putting together all the different pieces that you manage to build that picture for yourself. So really very, very interesting book, very disturbing, but if you like the sound of that, I definitely recommend it. After that then I read something completely different. So for the project where I'm buddy reading with my dad his 12 favourite books, I read or reread The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert A. Heinlein. So this is a really interesting book. I don't love it overall, and actually I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first time I read it. But I do think it's a really interesting piece of science fiction. So published in the 1960s, set in 2075, so only 50 years away now, and yet the picture of 2075 feels quite believable, despite the fact it was written over 60 years ago. So it's set on the moon, there's a colony on the moon that is like farming basically and sending stuff back to Earth. That colony is run by, or partly run by, an AI. So there's an artificial intelligence, this big computer that kind of organises everything, and it's about a rebellion on the moon because the people there feel like they are being exploited by the corporations back on Earth and the governments back on Earth. So that feels like, you could imagine that happening. And the other thing about the colony that I thought was interesting is it's really, really multicultural, which again feels credible. So that side of things I thought was really interestingly done. And the way the AI is portrayed is interesting as well. And the central character is also really engaging and interesting. He's like a technician who works with his job is to work with the AI. So all of that I really, really enjoyed, but the actual plot didn't really grip me that much. I just couldn't really get behind what was going on, if that makes sense. I didn't really connect with the characters. So yeah, great sci-fi, but I'm not sure I love it as a novel. Moving on then, for June on the Range, the final thing I read for that was Fatal Elixir by William L. D'Andrea. So this is the second in a series of books he was writing. Sadly, he died. He actually died before this book was published. So the books are about these two characters, one of whom is a retired sheriff who's now in a wheelchair, and the other of whom is a writer who's written dime novels based on the sheriff's experiences. And they now have moved to this town, and they run the newspaper there together. And you can see what William L. Andrea was doing in terms of setting up this town, setting up the characters, setting up different subplots and things like that. I think the series could have been absolutely fantastic. And it's really sad that he died before managing to write more books in it. But this one was really, really enjoyable. So a medicine show comes to town, and people who take the medicine that is sold by the guy at the medicine show die. And it's about them trying to figure out what's going on. Has this guy deliberately poisoned people, or is there something more to it than that? So it was very enjoyable. It feels a bit like an episode of a TV show almost. The way you've got the main plot, but then you've got these little subplots going on with different characters. I really, really enjoyed it anyway. After that then, so that was the final thing I read for June. So moving into July then, the first thing I read was a Gothic romance. So one of the people who suggested books for me to read in July was Mark Hodder, the author, and he just said read a Gothic romance. He didn't care which one. So I bought a couple off eBay. The one I read was this one, A Nightmare Legacy by Jane Corby, which was originally published under another title, Veil's Gate. I think A Nightmare Legacy is a better title. So this is about a young woman. She's just about to turn 21. She's inherited this estate from her uncle, and she goes there. But when she gets there, she discovers that there's a second will, which is has materialised at the last minute, basically, that leaves the estate to this couple who work there, who are related to the uncle's dead wife, basically. So that's their setup. So there's this tension between her and this other couple while the kind of will goes through the legal process, and they decide which is the true will. There's two guys there who she has kind of flirtatious relationships with, one of whom is a kind of brooding writer, and the other of whom is an older guy, an artist, who, when she was a teenager, when she lived there previously in the town, there was a local scandal because he was painting her and everyone thought that they were having an affair, and his wife ended up disappearing after that. So there's loads of stuff going on. And the book was just terrible. I mean, it was really, I really enjoyed reading it, but the writing was just appalling. Really, really bad, really stilted, just really ridiculous. The whole thing was just bizarre and odd. But I really enjoyed the experience of reading it. So there we have a Nightmare Legacy. Yes, it was a nightmare reading it, but an enjoyable one. After that, then, so this was suggested by Gail John. So this is Keeper of the Children by William H. Hallahan. This was interesting, but not entirely successful, I think is how I would categorise it. So it moves really, really quickly. It's only a slim book, as you can see, but the pace of it is incredible. So this guy who's been away on business comes back home and discovers that his teenage daughter has been kidnapped. And she's fallen under the spell of a Buddhist monk who runs this local cult where he gets teenagers to go out begging, basically. So that's the kind of backdrop to it. And there's this guy starts investigating and meets up with some other parents whose kids are also in this cult. Weird stuff starts happening, and basically inanimate objects become animated. So there's the first thing that happens is a scarecrow attacks someone. So the actual, the main plot and the explanation for what was going on, I didn't think was amazing. There's a lot of very 70s mystical type stuff in this book, which was fun to read, but maybe a bit unconvincing. But the actual horror scenes where these inanimate objects get animated and attack people were really, really enjoyable, really well done. Felt like it would make a great, kind of movie, like a kind of 80s horror movie. So yeah, I enjoyed a lot of this book, even if overall the plot didn't quite work for me. Moving on then, so another one. So this was suggested by Richard Gill. Another one, I said that randomly. Another book to talk about. So this was suggested by Richard Gill, one of my patrons. So this is Once a Saint by Ian Ogilvy. Almost forgot his name there, despite the fact the whole book is about him. So this is a memoir. So Ian Ogilvy is an actor, British actor. But his most successful role, or certainly the role where he made most money, I think, was playing the Saint in a reboot of the Saint TV series, which I think was in the late 70s, early 80s. And this is just a really nice, cosy book. I really enjoyed reading it. There's quite a lot of humour in it. There's some enjoyable anecdotes and some really interesting, like, behind the scenes stuff about how films are made and, you know, TV shows are made, and it's kind of split into different sections. It doesn't run chronologically, so there's a bit about kind of his like early career, but then after that it really splits into sections that are about the theatre, sections that are about film, and sections that are about TV. And he ended up suffering terribly from stage fright and gave up acting as a result, and the section on that is very, very interesting indeed. But the bit that I personally enjoyed most was the early part of the book, which is about his working with the director Michael Reeves, who was a friend of his. So Michael Reeves, best known for directing the movie Witchfinder General, which also starred Vincent Price, but made a couple of films before that, The Sorcerers, which had Boris Karloff in it, and Revenge of the Blood Beast, which was his first film. And Ian Ogilvy was in all three of those. Michael Reeves very sadly died after making Witchfinder General, which is kind of his, you know, his big breakthrough film, and I think he would have been a, you know, really big name in British horror had he not sadly died. But really, really interesting hearing Ian Ogilvy talk about their relationship and about how those films were made. So if you're a fan of those movies, if you're a fan of Michael Reeves, it's definitely worth giving this a read. So that brings me on to what I'm currently reading. I've got 3 things on the go at the moment. I try normally not to have too many things on the go, but at the moment I've got 3 because I've got 1 physical book, 1 audio book, and 1 digital book. And the digital book I'm reading because I woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't get back to sleep, so I needed something to read. So let's do the physical book first. So this is The Betrayal of Thomas True by A.J. West, which has lovely peacock edging. Hopefully you can see that on the sides there. So this was suggested by Mark Ford, and this is really good. So it's set in the 1700s, and it's about this young guy, Thomas True, who moves to London to like study a craft. So his uncle's a candle maker, and he goes there to like learn the trade. But he falls in quickly into this kind of gay like underworld in London, basically, with all these kind of strange clubs and like male prostitutes and things like that. And it's just beautifully done. It's really, really evocative. It's really convincing. It's really like rich and colourful. There's just a wonderful description to it all. It won an award from the Historical Writers Association, and it does feel like the kind of historical novel that is actually trying to paint a picture of the past rather than just setting a story in the past, if that makes sense. So yeah, really, really fascinating. I'm enjoying it very much so far. And there's a nice tension in it as well, in that there's this kind of, not exactly law enforcement, but there are these people who are like preying on this, preying on all these gay characters and trying to wipe them out. So you've got a real tension there. So yeah, it's very, very interesting and enjoyable. I'm liking it very much indeed so far. So the digital book I'm reading then is a book called Acrobat by an author called Gonzalo Lira. This was suggested by Seth Ball. So this is like a fun espionage novel is how I would describe it. A slightly silly, kind of quite actiony espionage novel about this kind of secret organisation or secret team within the CIA called Acrobat, who for some reason, we haven't discovered why yet, have been disavowed. They've been cast out of the CIA and they're now being hunted down. So they're kind of a disparate group. They've all got like different abilities and things like that. Almost a bit like a superhero group, although they don't actually have superhero powers. And they're just, kind of on the run. And there's just like the opening chapter was just action packed, really, really enjoyable, and had kind of almost like a manga vibe to it. Enjoying that very much, so very much indeed. Gonzalo Lira, somebody pointed out to me in the comments, is not a very nice chap. He's like a male rights activist and has said some quite unpleasant things, I think, in the past. But the book certainly is enjoyable. So the audiobook then was suggested by Jim from the channel Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff, and it's Waywood by Emilia Hart, which again I'm really, really enjoying. It's fascinating. It's kind of about witchcraft, but it's told through the stories of three women who I believe are related to each other, but one is like in, I think, the 1600s, one is around the time of the Second World War, and one is in the present day. And their stories kind of touch each other in interesting ways, but kind of are, are separate as well. But you can see the connections building up, and it's just fascinating. It's quite moving, but it's really gripping. I really want to see what happens, and kind of magical elements are starting to become introduced into the story. The woman from the 1600s is on trial for witchcraft, but there are kind of slight little witchy hints coming into the more modern stories as well. So yeah, very much enjoying that too. Right, so that's the book stuff finished. So in terms of channel stuff then, very quickly, so in the last week you've had my July TBR, where I talk about all of these wonderful books that I'm reading at the moment. You've had my announcement video, or cover reveal video rather, for Trash Tales, the anthology that's being published by Alex from the channel Alexander Bridge, which I've helped. So it's CriminOlly Presents is the official title. CriminOlly Presents Trash Tales, which sounds very grand, doesn't it? But it's a really fun collection of short trashy stories. So yeah, check that out if you like the sound of it. All the profits from that book will go to Dolly Parton's Imagination Library to help kids discover the joy of reading. So you've had that, and then you had my review of King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby, his new book, which just came out. In the week ahead then, you're going to get my June wrap-up. You're going to get an announcement video for an event taking place in August. See if you can guess in the comments what that event is. It's one that is very dear to my heart, and you will get a review, but I haven't decided what yet. Maybe the Sluts, maybe the Big Head by Edward Lee, probably one of those two, but I'm not sure which one yet. Anyway, I will leave it there and say, as always, thanks very much for watching. I hope you're safe and well out there. I hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.